What's going on, everyone? So yesterday at the Colorado game, Colorado versus Colorado State, Kyle Lowry and head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers, Chauncey Billups, were hanging out. They were seen talking. Granted, to be fair, it is a big game. You got prime time, Deion Sanders, head coach, Colorado. It's very likely that they could have just been there to enjoy the game, but it is a little sus, right? And it's not just this. It's several things that are kind of pointing towards Damian Lillard heading to Miami. We have a lot of reports that are coming out that Portland is really kind of trying to ramp up a potential Damian Lillard trade, and Miami is obviously the primary destination. It makes sense that as we inch closer to that training camp, that a deal will get done, right? Because both sides, Miami and Portland, both need to know what's going on, right? They need to know, like, hey, what are we doing here, right? Like, what is my roster going to look like? Are we going to have 10 new players, or are we going to have, Damian Lillard back? If you're Chauncey Billups, you're asking these questions. If you're Miami, you're like, okay, are we trading 5 guys and now we need to go fill in the gaps? Or are we pretty much set and we're getting ready to ramp up, right? Eric Spoelstra's got to be asking the same questions. There was also a IG post that Damian Lillard had uploaded and then immediately deleted, but as we see with all things, if it's on the internet, it lives forever. If you want more information on all those details, I'll link some videos down in the description of my As It Stands Sports, where I dive into other teams, because this is a Laker channel. And what does this have to do with the Lakers? Well, it's not so much Damian Lillard, because if Damian Lillard goes to Miami, there is a big question of, does Damian Lillard go by himself, or do we end up seeing the center, Nurkic, end up following suit, right? Now, that is something that Portland really wants to kind of move off of, is what we hear. He's still under contract for 3 more seasons, including this season. They would like to get off of his contract. He's making about $17.5 million a year. He's making like 16 and some change this year. And then going forward, that incrementally goes up. So if they can unload him and a Miami deal for, a Duncan Robinson, a Kyle Lowry, and then like a bunch of pieces or whatever, then they'll definitely do that. But my question is, what if they don't, right? So let's say Portland trades Damian Lillard to the Miami Heat, and Nurkic is still on the Portland Trail Blazers. Should the Lakers look to make a play to go sign him, right? So you look at the Lakers roster, we have several guys that are more than capable of playing the center position, right? Got Anthony Davis, but he doesn't want to play the center position. He wants to play the power forward position. So if he's going to play primarily the power forward position, then you're relying heavily on Christian Wood, and you're relying heavily on Jackson Hayes, which is fine, but you don't have anybody for the big matchups. Like, who defends a Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic or even like Steven Adams or Valanciunas, right? These bigger centers. Steven Adams isn't really so much an offensive threat, but you still need to box him out. He's an excellent rebounder, especially an offensive rebounder, right? And he's a guy that can still put the ball in the hoop if, you don't have anyone that can, at least bully him a little bit. And then Valanciunas is an excellent scorer, a guy that can absolutely score around the rim. So it's like, who do you have that can match up size-wise? And as I mentioned with Nurkic, he has 3 years left on his deal, which is fine for the Lakers. Because he's 29 years old this year. So when his contract is up, he'll only be 31. So he fits the timeline with this Lakers roster. He also, again, 3 years on his contract, basically lines up with all the other pieces that are on this roster. And you could go and trade for him for D'Lo, or if you didn't, let's say you wanted to keep D'Lo, you could do something like a Gabe Vincent and a, Shafino or something like that, and go take on Nurkic. Because again, he's only making 16, we'll call it 17 million, because it's 16,875,000, right? So you could easily go and acquire him. Fits the timeline. His salary is very reasonable for a center of his caliber. He's a true center, 6'11", 290 pounds. There are questions about just his injury history, right? Like, he hasn't been a model of just health the last handful of years, right? He had that one season 2019, where he only played like 8 games. And then since then, he's played 37, 56, and 52 games. But one, you wouldn't need him in as big of a role, right? Because like with Portland, he's basically been the second or third option. For the Lakers, he'd be like the fifth option. So you wouldn't need him in as big of a role playing as many heavy minutes as he would with the Portland team. Because you have him, you have Christian Wood, you have Jackson Hayes, who you could all find minutes for. And then outside of that, I mean, he's 51%, 52% field goal shooter, right? He's also 36% from three-point range last year, which is huge, on 2.3 attempts. Now, for his career, he's around a 30% three-point shooter. But again, last year, on the most attempts he's ever taken for his career, he shot 36.1%. Which, if he can just replicate that, that would be brilliant for us. And then from two-point range, he's a 56.7%, and then he has a 56.1 EFG. He's a not great free throw shooter, right? He's 67% from the free throw line, so that's not great. But he is a excellent passer, so you could run some plays and run, even just some sets, run your offense through him to a degree. He's a guy that is a legit, 15 and 10 guy, right? For his career, he's a 12 and 8 guy, but the last few years, he's given you about 15 points on average. The last 6-7 years, he's given you about 15 points per game. He's given you about 9 to 10 rebounds. But it's more so him just being a big body that can just kind of bang with the big boys, right? Now, as far as defensively goes, he's not like this elite defensive center by any means, right? He's not somebody that you're looking at and going he's just, clamps at the rim. No, but he is a guy that is better than league average from defense. He was a 114.3. League average is around 115. And he's serviceable enough. He's what you need. And it's more so just for spots. He's a guy that, as your second or third option, I don't think that's great. But him as your fifth option, I think that's perfect. I think that is absolutely brilliant. And this is a guy that basically averages 1 steal and 1 block per game. He's 0.8 last year. He gave you 0.8 in steals, 0.8 in blocks. But he's a guy that has averaged about a block and a steal for his career. So, again, serviceable enough to really just provide what the Lakers would be looking for. He, I think, would be a nice compliment next to Anthony Davis. You'd have a big body, and you'd have Anthony Davis in that help defender position, right? So you could also run, like I said earlier, some offense through him, dump it down to him. He can go to work down on the block. If that three-point shooting can continue to expand and he can continue to improve on that, that would be massive, right? Questions about it, though, is would he be okay kind of playing in that fifth man role, essentially, right? Because, again, if you had started, you're probably going Nurkic, Davis, LeBron, right? That's probably your front court. And then you have D'Lo and Austin Reeves as your back court. So, again, you have all these other mouths that are going to feed. Nurkic is, again, probably your fifth guy. Is he okay kind of just being hey, we just need you to get rebounds, play some defense, make some plays, get some buckets here and there. We'll give you some touches and you'll be good. He's not a guy that's gotten a ton of touches, right? Even last year, he only averaged about 9.7 field goal attempts per game. The last 3 years, hasn't averaged more than 10. He was 9 field goal attempts, 10.7, and then 9.7. So is he okay with kind of staying in that range of the 7 to 10 field goal attempts per game average? If he is, then that would be great, right? And would he be okay with playing, 20 minutes a game? Now, again, the last 4 years, he's only played more than 27 minutes, 26 minutes, 4 times his whole career, right? And the last few years, he was 26.8 minutes last year, 28.2 minutes the year prior, but 23.8 minutes the previous year. So if he's okay with being around that 20 to 23 minute range, then I think that he would be a solid acquisition. Right? Because I don't think he'd cost much. I don't think he'd be high maintenance. There's never been an inclination of like him being a disruptor or complaining about his touches or anything like that. He'd be on a winning team, a chance to win an NBA championship, right? It'd be a better situation for him than it would be with Portland. Portland, they get to move off of his long-term salary, so it's a win for them. That's all they want to do. They just want to move off of his salary. For the Lakers, they get that big serviceable body that they've been looking for and that they need. Get some nice versatility. Jackson Hayes, would he be okay being the third big, right? Like he already went from being like potentially starting alongside Anthony Davis to now the second or third behind AD, depending on how many minutes AD plays at center, if he plays any, right? So I don't know. It makes, like, if you needed a big body that was available, I personally still like the idea of Valanciunas, right? I think that that's another very obtainable guy, but I don't think Nurkic is a bad consolation prize. And I even think that there might be even an argument for him more, right? So I don't know, right? But also, would the Pelicans be willing to do a trade with the Lakers for Valanciunas, right? I mean, you can make the same argument with Nurkic, but the thing about Nurkic is he's got 3 years on his contract. How many teams need a center? How many teams are looking at him as that center? And how many teams are willing to take on that long-term salary, right? Like for the Lakers, it makes a lot of sense because you're already locked into this team for the next several seasons. Like basically your entire core is already locked up for the next 3 to 4 years. So it makes sense to go get him because now you have him locked up with the rest of the core for the next 3 to 4 years. So, and he kind of provides that bulky, sizable center that the Lakers have been looking for. Gives you insurance if Christian Wood doesn't work out. Gives you insurance if, let's say, Christian Wood does work out, but he's not willing to re-sign next year for the Lakers. And it gives you some insurance if Jackson Hayes ends up leaving, right? Because now you got that center that you have locked up for the long term. The biggest question would just be injuries. Can he stay healthy? Can he stay on the basketball court? If he can, then I think he would be huge for the Lakers. But those are my thoughts and opinions. And as always, I pass the question on to you. Let me know yours down in the comments below. Agree with me? Disagree with me? Somewhere in between. What do you think of the idea? Do you love it? Hate it? Love to hear it. Let me know.